Happy Friday. My name is Angie and I'm the Director of Speech Language Services at Charlotte Speech and Hearing Center. With all the things that have been going on lately, we've had to move most of our services onto online platforms, which for me means that I don't get to spend time with all of the wonderful children that I love every week. So we decided that just to kind of stay in touch and to have an opportunity to connect with our babies that we miss so much, that we'd add an online story time to our weekly schedule. So every Friday at 11, we'll be doing either a Facebook Live or a recorded story time. And whether you have a child that works with us at Charlotte Speech and Hearing Center or not, we would love to have you join us for our story times. So I'm going to start today with one of my favorite books. This book is called Yuck! That's not a monster! So if you're looking at this book, what would you think this book is probably about? Yeah, it's probably about a little monster family. And then this book, this family gets a little surprise that they were not counting on. All right, so let's take a look. Yuck! That's not a monster, is the title of our book. Mr. and Mrs. Monster were very proud of their 3 eggs. Mr. Monster kept them warm by huffing his hot, stinky breath on them. And Mrs. Monster screeched to them, "Rock-a-bye, baby, on the treetop." I think that's how monsters probably sing. One stormy night, the first egg cracked open, and out climbed an ugly little monster with prickly spikes and snarly fangs. "Ah, he's frightful," sighed Mr. and Mrs. Monster happily. So that's what they called him, frightful. Then the second little egg cracked open, and out climbed another ugly little monster with horny spines and bristly warts. "Oh, she's horrid," gasped Mrs. Monster. "That's what we'll call her." And then the third egg shook just a little bit. Frightful and Horrid gave it a poke, and then out crept something very soft and pink. "Oh, he's sweet," said the little monsters. "Let's squash him." Do your brothers and sisters treat you that way? I don't think I would like that very much if my brother and sister was to squash me. "Well, he's not what we expected," said Mrs. Monster. "He is a bit of a shock." "Let's throw him in the trash can," said Mr. Monster. Suddenly there was a crash of thunder. "Mama!" cried the fluffy one and jumped into Mrs. Monster's arms. She looked down at her bundle of sweetness. "I think we'll keep him," she said. "He may look different than us, but inside he's a monster just like us." So they named him Little Shock. Look at his sweet blue eyes. He does not look like the other monsters, does he? He was a little bit of a shock, a surprise. Each day, Frightful and Horrid grew hairier and scarier. They learned how to spit and hiss and snarl and scratch. But Little Shock, Little Shock just grew more fluffy. He liked to gurgle and roly-poly and twinkled his big blue eyes. And he loved his brother and sister, and he followed them everywhere they went. If you want to play with us, you need to be wild and rambunctious. Have you ever heard that word before? Rambunctious? It's a long one. Let's tap those syllables out. Rambunctious. That's a 3-syllable word. It's a long one. It means wild and crazy. You know anybody like that? I do. They showed him how to howl at the moon, "Ow!" until it hid behind a cloud. But Little Shock was afraid of the dark. They showed him how to squash and stomp and trample. But Little Shock saw a worried worm, and he sat down and gave it a hug. "Ugh," sneered Frightful and Horrid. "He's such a cutie pie." Ugh. So disappointed in their Little Shock. Soon Frightful and Horrid were bold enough to go monstering in the woods. I love that word. Have you ever heard the word monster used as a verb that way? Have you ever been monstering in the woods? Sounds like fun to me. You must take your brother with you, insisted Mrs. Monster. Frightful and Horrid snorted grumpily. You know that sound, don't you? But they put Little Shock in a wagon, and then they hid him under a blanket, and they tugged him along. I always think when I get to this part of the story, why do you think they hid him under the blanket? Do you think they were worried? Maybe something might get him? Or do you think maybe they were embarrassed? I don't know. I wonder why they hid him under that blanket. Let's see what happens. In the woods, Frightful leaped out at a fox and made its fur turn white. Horrid pounced on a wild pig and made it jump into a tree. Oh, they had a wonderful time. I guess that's what monstering is, scaring animals and being wild and crazy. Rawr, rawr. But Little Shock, he just hugged his blanket and he played peekaboo with a mouse. I like Little Shock a lot. I want to hug him. What shall we do now? Said Frightful. Let's find something big to scare, said Horrid. Something big rustled in the bushes ahead, so they crept up on it. You know what creeping is? When you sneak up. I know none of you ever do that. Frightful and Horrid saw a hairy hump. They winked at each other. They took a deep breath and they roared. But the hairy hump was only a little bit of a big monster, and it snarled and flashed its fiery eyes. Who dared roar at me? Frightful and Horrid were too terrified to run away. Terrified, they were scared. Their spines shriveled and their claws curled up. Suddenly the big monster spotted Little Shock. Ho ho ho! Cotton candy, he said. Little Shock stared up at the monster's face with his big blue eyes growing wider and wider. And then, mwah! He kissed that monster. Oh my gosh, he kissed a monster right on the cheek. Oh, yuck. The big monster wailed and he dropped Little Shock in horror. He was so scared. He was so afraid. His fur turned to frizz and his bristles fell out. Help, it's adorable! He ran crying for his mommy. Frightful and Horrid could not believe their eyes. You kissed him! You kissed him! Now, how do you think they feel about that, little brother? Huh. Well, Horrid swung her little brother high in the air and sat him on Frightful's shoulders. Maybe being cute is useful after all, she said, giving him a pinch. This, I would say, is not embarrassed. This, I would say, is proud. Little Shock just purred happily. Come on, said Frightful. Let's go home and we'll all kiss Mom and Dad. The end. This is one of my favorite books. I've read this to my kids since they were little. In fact, we've read it so many times that you'll see some of the pages are taped. We've had to put it back together. But one thing that I always did to make my kids interested in reading and help them stay interested in reading was to store their books with their toys. That way kids understand that books are a fun way to spend their time. Thank you for joining me today for our story time with Miss Angie, and I look forward to seeing you all again next Friday.